I'm Mavius Lynn. I'm a practicing occultist as well as a ceremonial magician. I'm excited to have a special guest on today and talk about something outside of my normal range of topics, which is folk magic. I will go ahead and let my guests introduce themselves and share a little bit about who they are.
Hi everyone, I'm Rhiannon Harvest, and I am a Irish, Scottish, and Cree folk witch. The practices are varying, um, and I am also a polytheist, pagan, and all-around nature lover. I do YouTube, and I have a podcast called Witches Ritual, where I talk all about the occult and folklore at large. And you can basically find me everywhere under Rhiannon Harvest.
Awesome. What a joy it is to have you on today. So, for those who don't know, and this could be really basic stuff for a lot of people, but a lot of people don't know. How would you define folk magic?
So this is the thing where people get a little sticky on it and they don't really realize exactly what it is. So it depends on the area. It's very regional. So there's folk practices that are very different across the board, but they are all still folk magic. So it depends on the region and where you're coming from. They can look a little different. But basically, it is a practice of the people, which is a very, very baseline of it. But it is also something that is used to help them throughout their daily lives. When you look back on history, a lot of the practices were to put food on the table, to protect their crops and their livestock and their families, and to bring them into more of abundance. So it is definitely something to help you get through your daily life. It's a living practice, and which means it's basically you have to be cemented into the culture to be able to be practicing the folk practices. A lot of people believe that just practicing through folklore itself is just folk magic, where you can have an entire practice based on that, but it's more than that. It's being rooted in the culture itself. Because if you're not a part of the culture, you're missing a large focus point of the entire point. Um, and yeah, it's basically my practice is informed on both ways, both through my lineage and research through my family's culture, and also through the folklore, where I develop my own practices based on stories.
That's so cool. I love the combination of both of those things you have. So, what are some things you do as your daily practice?
um, well, I do a daily cleansing. So this is something that's really important for me to reset my energies, especially as a more sensitive person, as I'm working towards my control of my sight. This is something I'm just learning about. Apparently, a lot of Irish practitioners have this curse or blessing of sight, of knowing things before they happen. So I can know things that may happen and then have this anxiety about it, and then have this huge deja vu moment. And just having that is a bit of a drain on me. So I do a smoke cleanse. I also protect with oils every day on the back of my neck, on my third eye. I carry crystals every day with an intention for protection. And I set an intention with a protective bubble around me. They're not necessarily like an iris practice, but they are something that helps me protect myself against downloading things I really don't want to have presented to me at the moment when I'm not ready.
That's awesome. And I'm really glad you shared about how you came about deciding on what for you personally was appropriate in your daily practice. So, in what ways has your daily practice evolved over time?
This is something I love talking about. I actually talk about it quite often on my own show. Is the concept of daily practice and how it can be so valuable, but also people tend to stress it a little bit too much, especially when they first start getting into practice of any type of spiritual workings. Is they feel like the practice itself is needing to be done daily, and it doesn't have to be, in my opinion. It's really just a tool to really get you into um, the regularity of it and getting you into your flow of it and seeing what you like and really starting to give you that ability to learn what works for you and what does not. And I found it was really important for me to pay attention at first because I was really focused on tarot when I first started, and I really wanted to be able to communicate with spirit because the way I was doing it was scary for me, but I wanted a way to still communicate with them without feeling my boundaries were being crossed. Um, but that very quickly moved and morphed into more of a channeling. So I do a daily meditation and I download whatever spirit needs to tell me in that moment, and that's their opportunity to talk to me instead of inundating me throughout the day when I'm not wanting those messages. I'll give you an opportunity to speak to me in the morning, and then the rest of the day is mine. So that's changed. So I don't do a daily tarot pull or anything like that anymore because I'm more familiar with it. I don't really need to work on it daily. But now my daily practices is more of meditation, channeling, and trying to hone my psychic abilities just so that I'm less surprised by things when they come into play in my daily life.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I imagine a lot of people listening to this right now, it's really resonating with them. It certainly is resonating with me. So if someone was hearing this, what were some signs to look for that someone's daily practice is working out well and it is headed in a good direction? What would be some things you'd look for?
I would say that you're on a daily path of growth. So if you feel like you're not growing as much anymore, you're not learning new things on a semi-regular basis, and you feel pretty neutral about the whole thing, then I would say you need to change things. So if it's working, you're learning, you're growing, and you're getting excited about new areas in your practice. Um, and that's like the main thing for me. If you're not growing, you're really not doing a whole lot. You're kind of just staying in one spot. So that's really important. And just knowing that um, you are dedicated to something. So just because you're dedicated to something doesn't mean you stick with it if it's not working any longer. If you feel like this sense of unease, I would definitely move on and try something different.
So, what are some common misconceptions you see people have about folk magic?
Um, so this is a huge topic I could do probably for an entire podcast or few, but a lot of people believe that folk magic is something that is very much centralized within the Americas, and it actually originates outside of that. So it originates in England and throughout Europe. So I find the Americas likes to censor themselves a lot in a lot of things, and that's fine for them to pick things up. But uh, folk magic does originate outside of that, and we know these things to be true because we have predated records of this in these areas before people in the Americas have picked it up and started producing things like hoodoo um, and the like. So, which is also another very well-known folk practice. Also, like powwow as well. Powwow is an indigenous magical practice. So, um, a lot of people believe that they're centered around Americas just because a lot of people do practice that now. So that's one thing. And then another thing is that they feel like because you are not like from a lineaged family, you can't practice folk magic, which is not true. If you center yourself within a study and you are centering yourself within the culture, then you can practice folk magic of that region. For example, with Irish folk magic, if you, for like myself, I am not in Ireland, I've never been there, I am in Canada. Um, it would be a little appropriative to just start adopting those things without centering myself into the culture. So what I'm doing to do that is be within communities, give back to people who don't know as much as I do, to send out resources as much as I can when I learn things, learning the language as much as I possibly can, and using that in my practice as well, is really important. So just know that you can be part of a folk practice if it's something that's calling to you, as long as it's not a closed practice, because there are folk practices that are closed for many different reasons, and you have to be invited in. But if it's an open practice and it is centered around that culture, you can definitely put your hand up and say, hey, I would like to be part of this community if you're actively working within it.
Great. And so speaking of giving back, I know you give back a lot to the community, especially in terms, I'm thinking of protection magic. Could you just describe really briefly what protection magic is? In some ways, you use that to empower the community.
Yeah, for sure. There are so many different ways you can use protection magic. And it's one of my most favorite subjects because for the longest time I felt like I didn't need protection magic because I was in that fear mindset, and then I switched and I was like, I need to step into my personal power mindset. And then I learned that and I was like, okay, I feel like I can handle things on my own. But now I don't want to have to deal with things when they come up. I'd rather have that wall up and something ready to go before something happens. Um, but what's really great about working with the community is you can put wards up for communities at large. You can do fire candle spells for benefiting a community. Like for myself, I like to do a monthly ritual for LGBTQIA plus communities to help give them that strength, to give them extra power and push to get laws to either be not passed or to have things passed in their favor. And that's something that I like to dedicate myself because I am an LGBT plus QIA person, and I have a lot of family and friends in that community as well, and not to mention my partner. And that's something I dedicate to myself to give back to the community. And there's so many different ways that you can do that for yourself. So you just pick a community at which is more oppressed or feeling like need more of a voice, and you can create a ritual around it to really help benefit them. I feel like a lot of people don't think that witchcraft really is this political thing, but I think it does have its flavor in the political spectrum in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I do notice that, I mean, maybe, some people would argue that it's not inherently political or not, but I think, we are seeing activism becoming more important in this overlap more and more between witchcraft and activism. So that's awesome. So this has been an absolutely amazing discussion. Thank you so much. And before we go, if you could share a little bit about where people can find you, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on all platforms under Rhiannon Harvest. I am on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and I will also be on the podcast, which is a ritual. I always stumble over that part. And we talk about all things folklore, magic, occult, and all of that. And then soon I will be opening a Patreon for people who want to start cultivating that community as well. So the link for that will be in my Instagram description box as well.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of our viewers today. And all of the links she mentioned will be below in the description of the video. So make sure you go check those out. And I'm the center of expression for the primal will to good, and so are you.
Bye.